Gray foxes often use logs that are fallen in the forest as sort of travel ways. And this log over here they've been using, there are two scats, one there and one there. And then this log also, that is nearby, is also being used as a trail or a little route. It's easier for them to get through the forest here instead of fighting through the brush. So these routes are good places to look for gray fox scats because they do like to mark on things, especially on top of things. And here are two scats, different ages, one older, one newer. And here's one right here. So let's look a little closer at these scats. So foxes have a varied diet, and you will find sometimes grasses in their scats and fur from their prey animals. Sometimes they eat insects. So this one appears to have a little bit of vegetation and also some fur from the prey. Over here, you have these two scats. Give the camera a moment to focus. So this older scat here shows bones from a prey animal. And then this one, which is still holding its shape a little better. The previous one may have been rained on. But this one also shows what looks like fur from prey animals. And if we were to break this apart, you would probably see some small bones in there. Maybe even fragments of the skull of the animal that it ate. I've broken apart the scats to show you what was in them. This one had what looks like some feather pieces in it from a bird prey. This one turned out to be very firm and difficult to break open, and was very segmented and tightly packed. So I suspect this one was actually a bobcat scat that the gray fox marked on top of. You can see the fur from the prey animals right here within it. I'm not sure what that is at this point, but definitely a lot of fur in there. But it was very twisted inside, compact, packed together, very difficult to open it with a stick. So I suspect this one was a bobcat. You can see the segments on this part of it right there. So those characteristics are a little bit more along the lines of what you expect from a feline scat. So being right here, I would say this the bobcat scat may have been overmarked on the fox scat because it was somewhat on top of that one. So there's a little bit of behavior going on here between these two animals overmarking each other's scats. And that's very common, especially with the gray foxes. Gray foxes and bobcats, roughly the same size, not quite, but they're mid-sized carnivores. So you sometimes will find their scats overmarking each other. So you saw the scats that were on that log, and in this case you can see some damage to this log that looks to have done by a pileated woodpecker. And what they're doing is they're coming along and breaking open the log, because within this rotting wood there are often beetle larvae, ants and the larvae, things that woodpeckers like to eat. And so logs have a very important ecological function. A lot of times if you go into a park and people will ask the park staff, why do you leave these logs on the ground and just let them rot away? Why don't you make them into wood? Well, first of all, they belong there, and when a tree falls, it's not because it was a healthy tree, that had really good quality wood that you could mill up and build something with. That tree had something going on that made it fall and weakened the tree enough that it could fall. So it became a log. Now once it's on the forest floor, water gets into it and starts to allow the fungus to grow, and that weakens the wood fibers, and then you can get your insects and beetles and ants and things coming in, and they start to inhabit the wood and use it as a home. And then you get the woodpeckers that come along and tear open the logs to get food, and bears and other animals. So logs serve a very important function in the overall ecosystem of the forest, and so that's why it's important to leave them when you can. And then the other thing that we just looked at is the scent marking behaviors of gray foxes and bobcats, and how they tend to deposit their scats on elevated locations like logs. So here's another scat, separate log from the one we were just looking at, but yet another scat that seems really, really firm and very segmented. So I'm probably looking at the little bobcat here. That's pretty tough. It won't break, so I'm going to have to get a rock to smash that. But anyway, the smooth outer sides of that which are a mucus coating when it's fresh, the segmented appearance, and the really, really packed, dense nature of it all lead me to suspect this is a feline scat. Now, I can't totally rule out feral cats at this location because I've seen feral cats, I think 3 times on my trail cameras nearby here. So in the past 5 years, I've caught feral cats several times. So it is possible. Bobcats are certainly the more common species out here, and gray foxes are even more common than the bobcats. But again, the log is serving a function here. So not only is it a home to the beetles and their larvae and the ants, it is also a source of food for the woodpeckers and the bears and other animals. And it serves as an elevated surface that allows some animals to scent mark. So logs have a function in the overall ecosystem of the forest, and that's what tracking is all about, is looking at the overall picture. You can look at this scat in isolation and say, oh, it's a such and such scat. But if you look at the whole picture, you start to see how the ecosystem is functioning and how healthy your forest is. And so that's kind of, one of the benefits of tracking is that you can learn these things and go around through your forest and figure out all these different ecological relationships that happen between the species that live there. So, leave the logs. They're great habitat. Animals love them.